Now, you're a parent, right, who've gotten involved in this academy?
Yes and no.
All right.
I'm a parent that decided to start this academy.
So,
yes.
all right, if you could say your name and spell it.
Yep. Zach, Z-A-C-H, Harsin, H-A-R-S-I-N.
Then go right into it.
Yeah. So for a myriad of reasons, my wife and I had decided to open and start our own exempt school here in Lincoln, Nebraska, called Acton Academy. And this all started before COVID. My wife and I had both followed the notion of going to school to get good grades, to get into the good school, to get a good job. But what we found was that this path left us $110,000 in debt between the two of us. That's not a very good return on your investment. And I'm in the real estate business, and so I understand return on investment. And where we find ourselves today, before COVID, is that I feel that we needed choice already. COVID has only sped those things up. And so that's why I wanted to start Acton, is because we need that choice, we need alternatives. Whether it's the piles of homework that our children come home with, sitting at a desk all day, now sitting behind a computer screen at home every single day for 6 to 8 hours behind the screen with their eyes watching these screens. And really only learning how to be good test takers and be students in classrooms, not how to be productive citizens in our city and in our state. So we knew that this traditional path wasn't for us, but what we didn't know is where to turn. We started by turning to where most families turn, looking to all the small schools around Lincoln and possibly moving to one of those cities. But then we found Acton, and Acton was everything that a traditional school isn't. There's no tests, there's no homework, no teachers to answer questions, only guides to ask Socratic questions. And Acton, there's 250 of them around the world, and they're outperforming pretty much every single public school there is in every single way. We actually plan to open next fall, so 2021. But then COVID hit, and I saw, like many families here that have testified, everyone scrambling, for lack of a better word, to find the fit that was best for their family, and trying to find what to do for their family. So, like any good entrepreneur, we decided to adapt and speed that up, and speed that process and timeline up. As I mentioned, I firmly believe that all the changes that you're seeing here, school choice coming to the forefront, parents fighting for their children, all of those things for their child's education, all of those things were coming. Change was coming to education. It's only that COVID has accelerated that and acted as that accelerator. So since July, and this is part of the reason why I was asked to come talk, I've spoken with at least 100 families here in Lincoln who are seeking alternative education options to the public school system. Whether that be the private or the homeschool co-ops, looking at private Christian schools, or us in Acton. Some are leaving because of the mask requirements, like you just heard. Some due to the chaos over the split Zoom, virtual, in-person chaos that goes on in the classroom and at home. And some that have tried homeschooling and just can't do it all. Still others that I've talked to are actually public school teachers in the system, saying how much they envy what we are doing and what we're starting, because what they see in Acton is the reason that they became a school teacher in the first place and are unable to perform to the level that they want to in the current system. Needless to say, options are needed. Of that 100, I would say it's safe to say that 99 of them were, one of their top concern was being able to pay for alternative education. And because of this, many choose to stick with the public school route simply because it's the only free option out there. but that doesn't mean that it's the best place for their child to learn. So I say all of this today and more in the letter that I shared with you guys, knowing that my grandfather, my father, 3 aunts, and 3 cousins are public school educators with over 175 years of combined experience. I have the utmost respect for our public school teachers, administrators, coaches, and everyone that's doing the best that they can in the current system. This isn't about public versus private for me. It's about the future of our state and what's best for my children and children across the state. From cars to contractors, doctors to dentists, us as consumers benefit when we have choice, and I believe that school choice is needed now more than ever.
Question for you, could you give us a kind of a concept of how this school works? Or
Yeah.
how many kids is it limited to the number of kids, students that one of these alternate schools could have?
Yeah, so we're doing a soft launch this fall, really opening for those families that needed it most. At full capacity, we'll be a K through 12 exempt school here in the state of Nebraska because there's only so many buckets that we can fall into. So we'll be a K through 12 school. As I mentioned, there's over 250 of them around the world that follow this model. Originally founded in Austin, Texas. And really it's a modern day one-room schoolhouse. So it's mixed age classrooms with kids helping teach other kids. At full capacity, you have about 3 to 4 grades per studio or per room with 2 guides in that studio space.
That's the school I went to.
Yeah, yeah,
In the country.
yeah.
Yes, thank you. So and how many teachers then? One per?
Basically 2 guides for about 30 to 35 students in one classroom. With that,
And you have the traditional grades for second?
Yes and no. We're not so much concerned with the grades. It's more how are they performing. They can move at their own pace. So if they are a math whiz and they want to blow through 3 years of math, they can. And Acton opened in Omaha last fall. They had a kindergartner complete kindergarten math in 4 weeks. It's amazing what a child can do when they're given the keys and said run.
So how do you take that from there to entering med school or getting a regents, as we heard earlier?
Yeah.
And the testing, how do you, and some young individual, a lady before might have a son that's 16 years old and doesn't need to be classified as a junior or senior, they're done.
Yep,
They need to
yep,
be
absolutely.
challenged.
Yeah, so by the time...
Does that happen?
Yeah, by the time an Acton student graduates, they've completed about 15 to 20 internships. Middle school and high school, half the time is spent off campus in real world internships. The other half is spent doing what takes our public school a full 4 years, 8 hours a day to teach. So they're doing that in about 3 hours a day, and then they're off in the real world getting real world experience. If they want to go on to be a doctor, a lawyer, something that requires a 4-year, they absolutely can. But they've completed all of those necessary things, usually by the time they're, 16 years old, and are ready to do that. As far as state or standardized testing, in the network, they used to utilize the Stanford test, but what they found was they were maxing that out by about 9th grade. And so they moved to one out of Iowa and utilized that to be able to compare to national. And they find coming in to Acton, it's not that they're getting the best and the brightest, they're getting kids that test below grade levels coming in. But on the back end of that, pretty much everybody, is pretty much maxing out that test. And on average, every student completes about 2.5 grade levels per year in Acton.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator Brewer?
Well, first off, I'm assuming that Darren's your dad.
Yes.
Did you know him when I went to college together, ran track
Yep.
together? He was probably one of the finest athletes in Nebraska,
Thank you.
and your uncle was too.
Yep, not far behind, actually in front of him sometimes.
Well, where did you go to college?
I went to Wesleyan, so I went to the opposite.
Wow.
Yeah.
You went to the dark side.
I did. The brown side.
Yeah, that's Scary, okay. This is really interesting in that for those of us that are somewhat dated and went to a one-room school, depending on your teacher, it was similar to that in that you were kind of allowed to move at your own pace.
Yep.
The problem is sometimes at the fourth grade, you'd kind of hit the sixth grade and you twiddled your thumbs for 2 years because you were trapped in that one-room school. So I find this fascinating. So I'm anxious to learn more.
Yeah. So to speak to that point, once they've completed a year of coursework, say fourth grade, they've completed what they need to for fourth grade, they're given the option. They can either do a fast forward and move forward in years. They can do a deep dive where they have something that they absolutely love. Maybe it's SpaceX, maybe it's coding, whatever they want, and they can go all in on that for the rest of the year. Or maybe they don't know what they want to do and they're not sure, and they can just go over and just do surface level investigation of tons of different subjects.
Well, you will definitely upset the apple basket here, but if it works, I can't help but think it doesn't have potential in different situations, so that those that have potential to learn at a faster level can actually get there without being held up just because of the system.
Yep, that's the goal, and that's what they're finding all over the world with their 250 Actons. They've been around for a little over 10 years now, so the data's there to show that.
And where did this actually, the core work on designing this start from?
Austin, Texas, and Brad and Laura Sandifer were the original founders, Jeff and Laura Sandifer. Jeff is revered as one of the top business professors in the entire United States. And so they started it for their children because they basically came home one day and said, we're done with the public school system. We're going to find something else that works.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Senator Pansy-Gross.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Harsin. So I'm just interested, so do you have any oversight from the public schools or from anybody that does certification of teachers, and what is all of that we require?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're considered an exempt school from the state. So currently it's viewed just the same as a homeschool co-op. It's just probably the most formalized homeschool co-op that you're going to find.
Okay. And are there certain tenets and religious requirements of the teachers, or how's that?
Yeah, there's actually 4 Actons operating in Nebraska. There's another one here in Lincoln, one in Beatrice, and one in Omaha. Ours and then the one in Omaha are not necessarily religiously affiliated. The Beatrice one and the other one here in town are affiliated with some type of religion.
And how do children get into your school?
Through an audition process. So it's really trying to align and make sure that, because we are kind of handing the keys over to the child a little bit and to the family, it's making sure that they align with what we're doing, make sure that we're a good fit for their family, and honestly make sure that they are going to be able to handle kind of that responsibility of being in charge of their own education.
So it's not available for every child?
No. Well, here's what I would say. It's an education and an opportunity for anyone, but it's not going to be for everyone.
And you determine who would best fit?
Yeah, through an audition process and kind of a self-selection process as well. We are going to be for those that are most willing to kind of work their way through it and not necessarily be handed the answers, because that's how life works.
So I'm trying to also figure out with COVID, we've heard some distressing stories, which of course aren't the fault of anyone but the virus, and the fact that we have schools that are working really hard in our state to try to be as accessible as possible and to deal with as many types of learners as possible. I'm trying to figure out what is it that you think that you could provide that LPS is not doing, or that the public schools are not doing?
Specifically pertaining to the virus?
Yes,
or
because that's what
Right.
that's part of what this
Sure.
hearing is about,
Sure.
a good part of it.
Sure. I think one is just a small static group of learners. We're not gonna, we're not a group of, 1,500 in one building. We're gonna be much smaller than that. So from a, slowing the spread or stopping the spread, whatever the phrases that we need to use, that would be part of it. And then just being an alternative option for folks, really, and I share this in that letter, and there's a quote from my dad at the end of it, but really what I see Acton being is a disruptor. And our life is being disrupted right now, right? Education is being disrupted, everything is being disrupted, but that's a good thing. And it can be a good thing if we allow it to be. And I share in the letter, just the way I look at it is Airbnb to the hotels. Airbnb has forced hotels to innovate. It's forced them to modernize how they're doing business. And even if you've never used Airbnb or care to ever use Airbnb, you've benefited from Airbnb being around, because we're showing that a different model can work. And it might not be immediately right now showing benefit or being an option for thousands of students, but showing that another model can work and there's other ways to do things, I think is very, very beneficial in the long run.
I agree, and I understand that in today's world, we're talking about disruptors and that the companies that are thriving right now, and many of them are disruptors. Lyft and Uber clearly are disruptors for the old model of taxi service. So
Yep.
I get that, and that all sounds good. The issue is children. And so while your company sounds really positive and beneficial, what happens when there's a group that is not good at teaching children, that is not good at making sure that they are keeping up to the standards required by the state? That's my problem with how to go forward on this. There are a number of people whose goal is to pay for private education, even though, that is a choice. That's a choice that people make. And I chose to send my kids to private colleges, and I'm still paying for that choice.
Yep, I paid for it myself.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, $110,000
Right.
that my wife and I had to pay off. We actually sold our home to do so. It's choices, and life is all about choices.
Yes,
I'm not saying it's not.
I understand.
I think that in this time, giving families the resources and allowing them to make the choice that they feel is best for their family is the best thing that we can do. And I also believe that every child that we maybe take away from the public school, a private school might, is taking strain off of an already very, very strapped public system right now. And so I think that can be a very helpful thing as well
So
right
the
now.
goal, is your goal to have the state pay for private entities that are now attempting to grow and educate children?
My goal is to provide as many options and choices to
Okay,
families
well, how
as
are you
possible
funded?
through the tuition that the families are paying us.
Okay.
Yep.
So solely from that and not from...
100% through tuition that's paid. Yep.
Okay.
And and like I said, I believe in this model so much that I was willing to go to all the work and the money and everything to put this, in place for families in Lincoln and for my family. I'm not here asking for handouts and a free ride. I'm here advocating for families that have said this is the most amazing thing we've ever seen, but we can't afford to pay for that ourselves.
Right.
And so getting creative and finding ways that could be an option would be great.
So are you thinking that it should be all the way from pre-K to through college? Because we're also dealing with some of the same questions about college loans and how people are having to pay so much money. You know, you went to Wesleyan, so clearly you paid a significant sum of money. That was your choice not to go to Nebraska for a lesser amount. So how do you weigh all of that?
Yeah, again, choices, right? And I think that post undergrad is a choice, and I paid for that. And personally, this is me personally speaking, I don't think that as a taxpayer I need to pay for someone's upper college degrees and everything. I would have never wanted anyone to step in and pay for those. It's, I paid for that myself, and it makes it that much more beneficial. But I also, going through that, know that I will not automatically default to my children following the same path that I did, because that was fed to us very hard, that you must go to a four-year college to survive and to be successful. And I don't think that that's going to be the case for 95% of the kids that are in kindergarten today.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That was your kids are very lucky.
Thank you.